Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv. Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing good, Yariv. Obviously, it's the end of the season here for the Flyers,
Mm-hmm.
just ending it off, really. Not too much for us to go over in terms of topics. It's really like we said, right? Just kind of the status quo since firing John Tortorella. A
Yeah,
couple good games, a couple games we've seen them return now to their prior form. So really just ending out the season, and just like we were saying kind of before starting the show, the Phantoms and their playoff run seems a little bit more interesting, right? Just ending things off here. But how are
yeah,
you, man?
yeah. No, I feel you on the. I'm doing all right. I feel you on the season here. We're kind of like in the dead period as far as like news a little bit for the Flyers, but that could change quicker than people think. Like the end of the season might be the actual excitement that we're waiting for between, like end of the season. We got the lottery draft coming up. We obviously have the Phantoms in their playoff run and some young players showing off. And then, once the lottery draft hits, there's a new coach to hire probably. We're going to talk about that. Just a lot going on that we're kind of like in anticipation for. It should be a very interesting off season, and I feel like that's kind of the big thing. Like
Yeah.
other teams are waiting for the playoffs, and we're waiting for the off season, which is weird to say because typically that's it's exciting, but you're usually like enjoying hockey while it's on. Right now, it's kind of hard to root for the Flyers to win,
Yeah,
which I
from the
don't
fan
like.
perspective, right? From the
Yeah.
fan perspective, it's tough. Like if you're watching this as a fan, you kind of would want them to lose out here. They're going to get a better draft pick in the long run. Will that be better for the team? Who's to say, right? I mean, you could potentially too in these final games, you could build bad habits with your, younger players if you're stressing losing or the team continues to lose as well. So I think it's like a fine line where you want to see some of the young guys do well, obviously, but you don't want to see them collapse and get embarrassed every night too, because a lot of these pieces are going to be a part of the team going ahead. So it's a strange place to be. I think we can, safely say that the remainder of the season doesn't really have much of an effect on the team's future going ahead. So that's why your point is completely accurate, right? Yariv? Like
Yeah.
if you're looking at what's important coming up for this team, it's not going to be the end of the season, but it's really that draft time, all those draft picks, free agency. It's going to be a huge offseason, just in terms of where this team's going in the future, right? And where they're looking to build and add on, because there's just so much, not only cap space that they'll have available, obviously more next season, but there's just a lot of different moves, I think, on the horizon potentially.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, and I'm struggling with it. Like I'm sure a lot of, on one hand, it sucks watching the team lose, but it's kind of like, and then they win, and you're like, oh man, they're moving up in the rankings, and you want the draft pick. My attitude at this point is like, let things fall as they should, right? I said
Yeah.
that with the Mitchkov draft. We ended up getting Mitchkov. Like things have a way of working out the way that they should. And, even after the Flyers winning 3 games, they are still kind of back to where they were. So, all right, but we're going to get into it real quick here because, while there isn't a lot to talk about, Vasily and I never have an issue talking about Flyers topics. So, I'm sure we're going to get into some good stuff. So, before we get started, just want to remind everybody to hit the like button, hit the notification bell to get notified. Subscribe if you can to our podcast. That's an awesome way to support this podcast. On the video side, on the audio side, go to Spotify or iTunes and give us a rating and a follow there if you can. Again, we were just ranked. I don't know if people saw this online, but we did get number 24 on all podcasts in Philadelphia. That includes all of Pennsylvania to some degree as well, just because Philly is like the big city outside of Pittsburgh. So we have a lot of success, and that's just the audio version. So thank you all so much for what you've done. We were on that top 100. We were number 2 of the Flyers shows, so that's pretty amazing behind Snow the goalie. And again, they have a former Flyer on that podcast, so pretty cool. So thank you all for your support. You guys definitely made that happen for us. So,
Yeah.
um,
Thanks, everybody. It's awesome.
yeah, it was a very cool moment. And let's make sure we have a great off season too. So like we're not going to stop recording. through the off season. Just in case anybody's not aware, we keep this going on a weekly basis, and we brought this up already. We have shows coming up with Steve for the pre-draft, post-draft, and we're going to do a free agency, post-free agency episode with him as well, and just talk all NHL stuff. So it's going to be good. And shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's at 4th and South. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Check out Jim's at 4th and South. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help you facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. Again, that's Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And I also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, SportsSpider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out the link in the description, sportspider.com. Again, the link is in the description. All right, so we have a good amount of topics. We're going to talk Flyers up front. We'll talk a little bit about coaching candidates. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Mitchkov. Then we're going to go into some, we'll talk about Ovi in the second half. We're going to talk about Demidov and Alec Nikishin as well, coming over some more NHL news there. I almost said nudes, which is weird. Then we're going to talk about Bump a little bit, and then we'll end with the Phantoms, which we referred to earlier. We'll talk a little bit about them and their playoff run that starts pretty soon. Okay, first piece of news, I guess really the only piece of news right now is Lexel was passed through waivers and as of today was loaned or sent down to the minors to go play with the Phantoms. Originally, I was kind of like, okay, this must be a Phantoms move. I was a little surprised it happened, but I guess when you look at the numbers, the fact that they still have an extra forward with Obels down there, and Lexel kind of has been beat out by Peltier, it's not that surprising. It's interesting to watch now that John Tortorella is not around, how things have kind of shifted slightly, not completely. It's not like Shaw's throwing everything out, but definitely the favoritism of Lexel has kind of dissipated a little bit. And now with the newcomer Dorwart with the team, we're going to talk about him as well. Looks like Lexel's kind of go back to the minors. But if you look at Lexel, he's still their leading point scorer, even only playing 40 games. He's the only player on the team above a point per game. So it does make sense that they would want him for this upcoming playoff run. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it makes sense from the Phantoms' perspective, right? Like he's been one of their best scorers all season, one of their best players. So if you're gearing up for a playoff run to add him here, just in the final stretch, it makes the most sense to reassimilate him into the team. So just from like a team building perspective and for where the Phantoms are at and what they're trying to do, I think it makes a lot of sense. And then if you look at it from the Flyers' point of view too, they're trying to get a look at Dorwart, obviously. They had Hathaway return, which was a reason why Lexel, even had an opportunity in the first place. And then I think Delorier's been a guy that they just want to have there probably in the final games. We know that, when you get into certain games like this in a situation where you're at the end of the season, you never know what could come up or, if certain teams might take runs or what's going to happen. Like we even talked about the final game, against them with Buffalo, like that's essentially a meaningless game other than draft pick. Like who knows what could go on in that game. Somebody takes a cheap shot. Like it's not bad to have a Delorier on the ice just in case. Right. So I get it from Philadelphia's perspective, and who knows, right, what's going to happen with Delorier going ahead. So it might be kind of almost, just a nice gesture by them, right? Realistically, let him finish out the season with the NHL club, because we even said it many times, like we're not really sure where his position stands going forward. So it might just be a nice gesture by the club to let him finish out, with the NHL team, obviously.
Yeah, those are all good points. What I thought of too is the fact that you have Carson Dorwart without much experience. You
Yeah.
pair him with Delorier, you pair him with Hathaway. Nobody's going to mess with the kid when he's out on the ice, right? Like,
Oh, of
he's not
course.
the
Yeah.
youngest player on the team. Mitchkov is. But still, Mitchkov has kind of been around all season. This kid's just coming up to the NHL. like if somebody does take liberty on Dorwart, like they got to deal with Hathaway and Delorier, and you
Yeah.
don't, you're not that focused on getting the kids' numbers up or anything like that, right? You just want to give them a taste of the NHL here. You're burning off a year of ZLC, so I think it makes sense. But we say goodbye to Ule Lexel. I will say I assumed that they were going to re-sign him to be an AHL guy. Now I'm not entirely sure he's going to want to stay because this is kind of a sign also that like okay, you're not probably part of the NHL future here. So I could see him wanting to find another role in the NHL to look for that opportunity of an NHL future, which most likely is not going to be with Philadelphia, right?
No, yeah, exactly, right. So I think for them and for him in general, who knows like where it's going to go, but I think for Lixell, he's probably would rather have an opportunity potentially at another NHL job, maybe with another organization. So we'll see if he tries to opt for that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I imagine he's probably going to be looking around and give himself a chance to make an NHL roster. I guess he could, and this is why I only had maybe him signing a 1 year deal. But he could just be like, okay, I've tried, I've had my taste here. They're not latching on to me. And again, I could see the Flyers being like, hey, we want you in the AHL. We want you back on the Phantoms, but probably not much more than that. So as of right now, the Flyers are tied for the fourth worst record in the NHL with Boston. Boston has them beat at the fourth spot if you're thinking about it from a draft perspective, just because they have an extra loss, but they do have more regulation wins. So if the Flyers lose to the Rangers in the upcoming game, the Flyers kind of drop right back to four. Um, Again, we kind of talked about this in the opening. It's a weird position to be in to want your team to lose, especially when you have so many young guys that you also need them to succeed at the same time because a lot of these guys are coming back and we need them to be better next year, especially guys like Mitchkov, who's still in the Calder race, right? We still want to see him hit 60 plus points in the season, right? He's got 5 games left. But at the end of the day, it's almost like you want Mitchkov to like put up points and the Flyers lose. Like you
Yeah,
want them to
hat
lose
trick
like
every
five
game.
four, right?
Hat
Yeah.
trick every game for Mitchkov, but as long as the Flyers are losing 6-3, right, or something, then
Right.
we're
Yeah.
good to go in terms of the draft pick. I mean, like we were saying to start off, right? Like it's a tough position to be in, not only as an organization, as fans watching, even as players. I mean, the players don't care about the draft pick, but
Sure.
it's tough for them in the sense that these games are really meaningless. Like you're playing for yourself, you obviously want to play for your teammates and play a hard game,
Yeah.
and show your work ethic out there and show the fact that you belong and you can make an impact if you're an NHL player. But just knowing that, hey, this really has no effect on anything other than potentially my job next season or maybe
Yeah.
what the coaching staff or organization thinks of me. It's a tough situation all around, for them involved, for the organization, kind of watching them finish out, and for the fans, obviously it's the toughest. I mean, for Danny Briere and the staff, it can be an interesting time too because they get to see some other players they might not typically always see, like a Dorwart, and maybe get some looks at other guys and other opportunities. Like I'm sure they're potentially maybe telling the staff, hey, like let's get a look at this guy in this role or this spot to end the season off, which would make sense, right? Like it's kind of almost like I'd say that this is like a preseason, but like I find these games with the team that is out of the playoffs and in this position to end a season, almost like a preseason where you can kind of try different things, get a look at different guys. It's not the way that I look at it, right? Like it can almost be a tryout for certain guys. And just looking at where the Flyers, are going to potentially pick in the draft, right? If you look at where they could finish and what's happening right now, and depending on the games left, there's a couple options. So if they went 2-3 in the final 5 games to end the season, they finished with 75 points. Obviously, 3-2 would get them to 77. Um, and then 3-1 to 78. So pretty much you'd go from, if they go 2-3, they'd finish likely fourth. If they went 3-2, they'd finish likely fifth. If they went 3-1-1, likely sixth. 4-1, you're probably going to seventh. 4-0-1 to eighth, and then 5-0 to ninth, right? So if they win out here, they're going to really improve their draft position. If they lose out, obviously it's going to be even better. But I mean, if you look at probably what they've been doing the last few games, it's kind of been okay. They won three, then lose again. A few. I would say that probably what's coming up is maybe a 2-3 or 3-2 to finish off, and you end
Yeah,
up
I
being
think
in
that's
like,
safe.
a fourth or fifth or sixth or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2-3 or 3-2 is definitely the most likely maybe overtime losses rather than regulation losses.
Yeah.
But I mean, my focus is being in that top five. And I think everybody is kind of focused on that as well. And we have
That's
a
the
few
best case
names.
scenario, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we
for where they're at and what type of player they need. Like we heard Steve run it down last week in terms of the tiers that, after about 6 or 7, it starts to drop off considerably. So you have to think if you're the Flyers, you really want to be not in that, obviously in the top five for sure, but even if you're at 6 or 7, they should still be able to get a really good player. But once you get beyond that, is really a question mark in the sense of, okay, this is still going to be an NHL player, but is it going to be, an impact player of a top line magnitude? That's not as cemented, right? So I think if you're Philadelphia, getting in that top five is the best case, like you said, right?
Yeah, and we have to be weary of the lottery draft, right? So if you finish even in sixth and, a team jumps you somehow in the lottery draft and you
Yeah.
drop to seven. So like I think ideally the lowest they can fall is four at this point, right? So if they can finish in the fourth spot, that's pretty safe because even if you drop down to fifth, you're probably okay. It gives you the best opportunity of the picks to get the lottery draft. So I think the most positive way, ironically, is to kind of lose out, end up in four, but they're not going to lose every game. So
Yeah.
be prepared for that too, and neither will their opponents, right? And like Seattle has played well here at the end. Boston has kind of fallen apart, but maybe they turn it around a little bit, right? So we got to be open to that. I think Buffalo is probably going to continue to move up because
They've been doing
they've
well
been playing
lately.
well. Yeah.
I think for a lot of these teams at the bottom, right, like we said, it's kind of the same story for them as it is the Flyers. Like it's all these teams kind of looking for motivation to finish their season because when you miss out and you're eliminated, before things are ending, there's only so much really to do that you can play for. Like even Bradshaw was mentioning today in the press conference after practice, that it's even as a coach, it can be tough to get these guys geared up to play these types of games because there's really nothing at stake for them, specifically the guys on the ice, other than, trying to cement yourself for next season. Like if you're a young guy, you want to prove yourself to potentially get a spot. But like if you're a veteran player that's been playing in the league for years and years and years at this point, I could understand why it's a situation that's kind of hard to get motivated for because there really isn't anything coming right after these 3-4 games and the season ends. So
Yeah. And it's really weird because on one hand, you want to see your team play, you want the mentality to stick of always being competitive, but the other time you got to give them some grace because we do, they know we're not that motivated in them winning also. And they understand that we don't care if they win so
yeah,
much.
it's
Maybe the
true,
people
right?
at the game, right? If you're going to watch a game, you don't want to necessarily watch the team lose, but
Or
from
have
the
it be
outside view,
embarrassing. Yeah.
right, exactly. Like pretty much Mitchkov is the biggest thing, right? The more Mitchkov scores, the more excited people get. Like that is quite obvious. It's like Mitchkov hat trick watch every game is what's preferred, and outside of that, nobody really cares too much about any of the winning at this point. So let's talk about Carson Dorwart, who had his debut game, only played one game so far because of this weird schedule the Flyers are in. He played 10 and a half minutes, 10 minutes, 32 seconds, 15 shifts, hit two shots on net, two hits, playing center on the fourth line. He was 40% on the faceoff draw, a game where, Cates was also 40%. Flyers didn't play their best game. They played pretty poorly in the third period, actually. So they got their butts kicked kind of in the third period of that game. But they actually came out all right. And my overall thoughts on Dorwart didn't really look at a place. Looked pretty good in his first game. Again, didn't play too much. Um, it's not. I like his size. I thought his shot was real strong. He had one really nice shot on net. Seemed to be a heavy shot of some sort. I think it's
I
gonna
think I got
be.
gloved or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be a little hard to know much about him in one game. But let's see how he finishes. He's probably going to play all five of these final remaining games, barring injury. And we'll get a better idea of his sample size. But I do like that they have a center with some size, which is good, who seems to be more of a two-way guy. I'm encouraged by it. I don't know if he's going to be with the Flyers even next year. Um, Maybe that was promised to him, but it would seem weird that he gets promised an NHL role. I think he would have to compete at camp just like everybody else,
Yeah.
but he's looking to impress, right? He's
I imagine
22.
he's gonna get the opportunity, right? He's 22. I think that's what this is all about. I think even he probably realized you look at the Flyers' depth. I mean, if his agent's doing a good job, he's probably saying, "Hey, the kid, like this is a great opportunity for you.
There are center spots
These
open
guys
here.
have no centers. Like this is a chance where if you need to go in and earn your way in, like the opportunity is there just because there's not a lot of other competition in general, right?
Yeah.
But I would say for his first game, it's hard to obviously make a judgment or an assessment off just one game, as you said, Yariv. But I think, for an initial showing, really pretty promising. Like,
Yeah.
looked honestly pretty quick for a big guy. Obviously, he's nothing too crazy in terms of the size. Like, he's only 6'1", but um, for that size and for the weight he has on him, almost 200 pounds, like looked pretty fast out there. I thought the skating was
Yeah.
good. He was getting in on the forecheck. With DeLorean Hathaway had a couple good shots that I saw. I think I'll be interested just to see more of the shot, like in areas that become scoring opportunities. If he gets, certain chances, like can he raise the puck like in close, stuff like that, like in terms of finishing, that'll be interesting for me.
Yeah.
Just to keep an eye on. Also, just to see too, like in these final five, like does he get more than any fourth line time, maybe with some other guys that are aside from DeLorean Hathaway? Like I know we said that it's obviously great to have them playing with him to kind of help him through, his first few games in the league and to kind of almost be like protection for him. But it'd be interesting to see him with other guys that, have more scoring prowess just to see what he could do there as well. So we'll see. I mean, if he takes some other shifts with some other guys, if he maybe gets any power play opportunities at all, that'll be interesting and something to keep an eye for. But I think for just the final five games, they'll be trying to see, okay, does he look like an NHL player, right? Like, does he look like he belongs? And so far, to me, he doesn't look like he's out of place. So I
Yeah.
think it'll kind of be more of a thing, like at least going into next season. Okay, if this kid doesn't look out of place at all in these next five, that's a great sign, and we'll see what he can do, in training camp and preseason to earn a spot. Because I don't think it's just enough to not look out of place. You obviously have to stand out and do something as well, but you don't want to look like you don't belong whatsoever. And at this point, that's not the case. So I think we'll just see where he progresses, right?
Yeah, I mean, getting two hits and two shots on net in your first NHL
That's
game
a good start.
in only
Yeah.
10 and a half minutes, it's a good start. And again, this is a game that was heavily ice time dominated by the Flyers top line, even though they're not listed as the top line, they clearly are. And I think people need to start adjusting the way they're ranking these lines and not putting Noah Cates as number one center because he's not, where Sean Couturier is clearly the number one center on this team. Uh, Konechny had 24 and a half minutes. Couturier had 24 and a half minutes, and Mitchkov had 23 minutes.
Yeah, it's not surprising
So,
because they were looking for a goal, right? And they were throwing them out there, but the Flyers in general, they didn't create a lot of offense in that game. Bradshaw kind of mentioned that he was looking for more from them offensively, just due to the fact you start out 1-0. I think they only had like what 12, 13 shots after two periods, so that's not ideal.
yeah,
And then you
not
could
their
tell,
best game.
right? You could tell that Montreal's urgency once they hit the third period and we know what's on the line for them, and obviously nothing's on the line for the Flyers. You could just sense Montreal taking over just due to the urgency level of their game. You saw them take it up to another level where the Flyers weren't able to match it, right?
Yeah, and that might happen against the Rangers too, who have kind of found their way out, but they're definitely not giving up on the playoffs until they're statistically eliminated. So they're going to want to come out and beat the Flyers. And look, it's gonna be a thing here at the end. And the good news is Mitchkov's going to get a lot of ice time. That's the good news is that Mitchkov is probably going to play 20 plus minutes a night. So a guy who is having a very good end of the season, probably his best stretch point wise ever in his career.
I would believe that,
Yeah,
yeah.
is Ryan Paling. I'll let you go through the statistics because I know you have those up. And we'll talk about Peltier as well, who's also improved. But Ryan Paling is on the rise. And a lot of people don't include him as like a young player on this team. But the reality is that he's like a year older than Cates. He's not an old player. And he does remind us of Scott Lawton in the career projection and the type of player he is. He's a speedier player than Lawton, but again, he's that serviceable third line player in the NHL. And if you look at when Lawton kind of took off, it was really around age 26, 27, where most NHL players peak. And he's kind of hitting that point now, being, I think he's 26 years old.
Yeah,
Uh,
26.
yeah, he must have, I think he just turned 26 too. So uh, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the beginning of Paling's like rise offensively. Which again, it's not capped. He's not a 60-point player in the league, but maybe 40 points on the regular is something that can be anticipated by Paling, as we move forward here. If he plays a, primarily fourth line role, those numbers might not be as high, but it does seem like his numbers have gone up since Lawton has been departed. He's been taking Lawton's kind of role since Lawton has been removed. He's definitely outpaced Lawton in the point production since he's been gone. But he is, again, one of those guys, and this is why we keep saying that people keep talking about like early 20s as being like the prime for a lot of these players. And it's just really not true because it's just not your physical prime that comes into play when playing in the NHL. It's your understanding of the game, your role, how
Yeah.
smart you are on the ice, your anticipation out on the ice, understanding when to make plays. And it does seem like Ryan Poehling is playing his best hockey over this stretch. So hit us with the numbers because if you guys don't know them, you're going to be pretty surprised by it.
Yeah, just for Paling in general, right? Like I would say too this season, like so far, he in 63 games, he's got 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points. And then last season with the Flyers, he had 28 points in 77 games. If you think about that injury he had with the concussion, right? Like if he did not get hurt, maybe he's closer to that 35, potentially 40-point range, which is not really out of the ordinary, just with the way you've seen him play lately. But with Paling, it's just interesting because he does all those things of like a fourth, third line player that's really great. But just the speed
Got the
factor.
wheels. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And he can really keep up with guys that can bring that speed like a tippet. So it's
He's
interesting, but
kind of a perfect fourth line center for a good team.
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Just the way that he plays and his speed. So yeah, just to go over it, right? Paling in the last 11 games has 12 points. In those 11 games, he has 8 goals. So it just shows, I mean, this is his most productive stretch, obviously, just due to the fact that, he has 12 goals this season, so he scored 8 in the last 11. So he's really on a heater. It'll be interesting for me just to see if this is something that maybe could continue into next season because I think lately we're just seeing how much of his speed can be a factor
Yeah.
offensively, especially this last stretch. In a lot of the games, his line, specifically with Peltier and Tippett, has really gotten the Flyers going. Especially over the 3-game winning streak, they really had some strong showing. Like even Peltier, as well, I kind of wanted to bring up here and mention. I
Yeah.
think ever since being put on that line with Paling and Tippett has looked a lot stronger. He's looked a lot more noticeable. You're actually seeing him, make plays on the ice and contributing in terms of making an impact. Whereas under Tortorella, I just think he was getting way too minimal ice time to really make an actual impact or really contribute on the ice because when you're getting 6, 7 minutes a game on a new team, it can be really difficult, right? We've seen that ice time rise now to almost between like 13 to 15, 16 minutes or so these last handful of games. So I think with the increased ice time, we're seeing more of what he can do. He's got 4 points in the last 5 games as well. So he's benefiting too from Paling's good play. Both of them are because in a lot of these plays, I would say too, you're seeing Peltier, do some really nice board work to retrieve a puck and potentially set up Paling or vice versa. So they've been
Yeah.
working, together well. It's encouraging for Paling because he had a really tough start, to his Flyers career, right? Like not a lot of offensive production, also not a lot of ice time. So to see him kind of, look a lot better to end the season off, I think that's encouraging,
You mean
especially just
Peltier?
yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. You said Paling, so I just,
Oh, okay. My
yeah.
mistake there. I meant Peltier, but yeah, just
Yeah.
it's encouraging to see him, end the season strong because you get a player like that for Frost and Farabee. You're thinking, when he started his stretch with the Flyers, oh, okay, like is he going to be able to contribute really anything, right? So
Yeah, and this is one of the things and people know I like John Tortorella. Obviously, I was a fan, but and the more I think about like him being removed, like there were kind of signs for it, like even earlier, like, and I talk about this all the time, and I probably just looked past it because I believe in John Tortorella's toughness. Like I do like that element of him, but when you're publicly coming out and be like, I don't know where this guy has a role in the NHL. Like, he was doing it to York and all that stuff. And like that is usually the first sign of the coach is going. Like when he starts complaining about the players that he has on
Yeah.
his team, it's like that is not your job. Now you are making excuses.
Yeah, well,
And
he mentioned that about Peltier, right? Like in one of
right,
his pressers, he
he was
basically
like,
said like, "Oh, I don't know what he is in the NHL," and it's just like,
he's
well,
not big enough to be a checker. He's
but
not good
you've
enough to
only,
score.
yeah, but you've only played him for like 3 or 4 games, so like just give him some ice time and actually see, right? I think that's probably a frustration that maybe
He was like, oh, I'm
the
sorry.
management had, right? Like that they
Well,
acquire this guy and he's getting 6 minutes of ice time on the fourth line. It's like, well, why did we acquire him then? There's obviously a
Well,
reason, right?
don't you
So
feel like it's like in a sense it's like Tortorella's kind of giving up, where
almost,
he's
yeah.
like not trying to get more out of Peltier. He's just going not good enough, and it's just like, dude, that's not the point of this. Like we don't even know if he's not good enough. And now that you're gone, he's showing he might actually be good enough, and you didn't give him that even that opportunity. And it's funny because I think he actually would have really liked Carson Dorwart, just off of like his on paper, credentials and
Yeah,
the way he
yeah. Seems like
played.
a torch guy.
Yeah, but like I look at the way he treated Peltier and I'm like, hey, dude, like this is like part of the gig here. We're rebuilding, and this is kind of goes back to like the Tortorella Briere thing. It's like, dude, this is like part of it. You need to like get the
Yeah.
most out of these guys because
Well,
even if Peltier is not here to stay, we get less for these players if you don't play them and tell people they're not good enough. Like we need to value our assets. I've been
yeah,
saying it for a
exactly.
while, and that was not the attitude.
Yeah, at least with Peltier, right? Like, I mean, if you're a Briere and the staff, you obviously scouted him, and there was a reason why you specifically want to acquire him back in that trade for guys like Frost and Farabee. Like, there's something you saw in his game that could be beneficial to this roster. So the fact that the coach isn't going to really give him the ice time or try to, play him in a beneficial position to actually get what you saw out of him, that's not a great sign, right? So I think that's one of these silver linings to end the season, I would say that if you're seeing a Peltier kind of produce the way he has been to finish off, if he can continue the hot streak here, he's got the 4 points in 5 games. If he can turn that into, let's say, who knows, like 8 points in 10 in the final 10 here, that's a really great sign, right? Because you saw a guy go from being on the fourth line primarily, not contributing a ton, to 8 points in 10 games in the NHL to end the season. So I think for the Flyers, that would be like a great story for Peltier to end it off and then kind of try to continue it into next season. And then just to end the Peltier talk, I just want to go over we have the comparisons for Frost and Farabee. So
Sure.
Frost in 28 games with the Flames since the trade, 8 points. Farabee in 24 games with the Flames since the trade, 5 points. And then Peltier in 20 games played, 6 points. So he's almost, I mean, outproducing them in a role where he hasn't had a lot of minutes really, except for like the last probably like 5 or 10 games. So
Yeah, and it goes back to our initial conversation where people were like shitting on the Flyers for their return on the trade. And our instinct and our message to people is like, this is a wait and see type of trade. Like, you
yeah,
don't know if the Flyers actually, like, you don't, like, we need to see more of what they're doing. Obviously, it was all to garner more cap space. Like if anything, Kuzmenko has now outplayed all of them, which is not that surprising. He's over in LA doing well. They got a return for him. They have a bunch of cap space rolling into the offseason. They have Peltier who's upped his value. They have all these picks that they got in return, right? So this is what the trade was actually for. And again, more evidence where a lot of people jumped on Briere and said he got fleeced, more evidence that Briere does know what he's doing, and he took a measured risk here on
yeah,
trading away two younger guys. Um, so, and it does kind of roll me back to what we were talking about with Tortorella, and this is like kind of rolls right into our next topic, which is like coaching candidates, and a guy like Brad Shaw, who is one of the candidates to obviously be the coach of this team next year. And a guy that I personally do not want to leave the organization, and I don't believe the Flyers want him to either, but we'll talk about reasons why that might be the case anyway. But he clearly understands the assignment. Just listening to his press conferences, like he is clearly a teacher by nature. Like even the way he talks to the media,
oh
he's like
yes,
teaching people about what he's looking for. It's almost like he's trying to train the media. It's like the exact opposite of Torts, where he just goes wrong.
yeah,
but he clearly understands the assignment that is like my goal is to take each one of these guys and make and deliver a certain message that will make them better in a teaching manner. And I know that my number one focus is not just winning. It's these guys need to get better at the NHL game, right? And the way he's kind of put that on Peltier, he's going to do that with Dorwart. He's doing that with Mitchkov. And credit to John Tortorella, I believe he's already was doing that with Drysdale, and he's continuing that with Drysdale and continuing his role. And he even spread out the minutes for all the defensemen last game. Like York played second least on the team, which again he didn't play very well. The minutes were kind of spread out pretty evenly, but Drysdale was second on the defense in minutes. It's like you can tell like he has got this teacher mentality where
Well,
he really wants not just to win, but he wants guys to get experience.
yeah, well, he's just a really hard or really smart hockey mind, I would say, Brad Shaw. Like it's pretty evident just from hearing him speak in his press conferences. Like I don't know if anybody listened to the presser today, but I would, you know, employ you to go do so and try to listen to that. But I would say at least if you listen to that presser and what he said, right, there was a really good question brought up just about the team's 5-on-5 play and how they performed this season. Because in terms of 5-on-5 metrics across the board, they've actually been one of the top 10 teams in the league at 5-on-5, which is crazy to think about. But like when your power play is as bad as it's been, makes a lot of sense. Anyways, but you look at the 5-on-5, right, and what he kind of said about their play. He was getting into depth in the presser just about, how they set up their 5-on-5 play, where he wants certain guys to be, and kind of the way that they welcome the 5-on-5 counterattack from other teams. Like basically the way they break the puck out and things like that. He was saying that it makes them a predictable team, but that predictability gives, other teams, they have to essentially make two passes to break past their neutral zone and to do certain things to get through their structure. So basically they're open to, being predictable at 5-on-5 because it makes it so hard for other teams to penetrate them and essentially get chances against. I just thought the way he was opening up about, the intricacies of the game and the actual X's and O's, it just shows how smart of a hockey guy he is and kind of what he knows what he's talking about, right? So I thought that was really interesting. And if you're going to keep a guy like that in the organization or try to, it's definitely beneficial just due to the knowledge that he has, because you can clearly see that he knows what he's talking about just in terms of, okay, where should you be structured? How are you supposed to set up certain guys during neutral zone forecheck to ensure that, it's even harder for them to break through when they're trying to break out? And then how do you break out to counterattack that? Like it's all,
Well,
an addition on each other and compounding on each other, right?
what I love that you just said there is that he knows that it's predictable, but it's effective. And that's exactly what I've been saying about the power play and how people were for not so much now, but for a while they said the Flyers power play is too predictable. And I kept saying how that is irrelevant and how it needs to be consistent and executed to perfection to be a good power play. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, it's not so much that because there is no unpredictable. Like, nobody, and Tortorella said this too, no team is using vastly different systems than the other teams. It's how effectively are you executing on the game plan that you have.
Yeah.
And that's something the power play doesn't do, but something that 5-on-5 does do well. And it shows. And the penalty kill at times has done really well. Last season, wasn't it unpredictable penalty kill? No, it was very predictable to know that Lawton and TK were going to come bum
Yeah.
rush you the other way, but there was no way to stop it.
I think it's all about just being prepared for the situations. Like it seems
Right.
that 5-on-5,
Exactly.
they know, okay, if another team's doing this and trying to, attack us in this way, then we can set up in this way in our forecheck and then try to stop them, right? So it's just understanding each situation as it comes at you as a player and knowing where to go on the ice or what to do.
Yeah.
So that's, the main thing. And obviously Shaw's a very organized coach. You can just see by the way that he kind of talks and the way that he's
Yes.
pointing out the X's and O's. Really smart in terms of just the hockey and kind of where to go and what to do. So I would say, I mean, if they can keep him as an assistant, that would be a really
Ideal.
big benefit.
Ideal.
But
Yeah.
it's tough just because, he came here as assistant with Tortorella. So let's say hypothetically, he's looking to get back into the head coaching ring here. is Tortorella going to try to bring Shaw with him wherever he goes next, right? So
Yeah.
who knows what might happen. Did you want to go over your just kind of the
Yeah,
potential
so
candidates?
so the two internal candidates that we have is Brad Shaw and then Ian LaPerriere's name's been thrown out there. I think we're both in agreement that the likelihood of Ian LaPerriere becoming NHL coach of the Flyers, which I've heard thrown around by a bunch of big media people, is
Slim.
slim to none. I don't think he is. It's not even that he's doing poorly because right now the Phantoms, he has improved as a coach for the Phantoms. But I don't think the Flyers are looking for Ian LaPerriere to jump to the NHL to be coach of the
Not at this
Flyers.
point anyway.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's exactly what they're looking for. I think Lappy is even questionable at the AHL level, and I think that they're looking for something more experienced than even Lappy, who I think is a I would not be surprised if Lappy ends up being a good NHL coach at some point. I know a lot of people love to be like, they are what they are, and he's not a good coach. And it's like, yeah, but coaches evolve too, and he's generally pretty young for a coach as well. He's also learning to be a coach. So I don't think they're going to be like, oh, Lappy got them into the playoffs 2 years in a row. He's going to supersede Brad Shaw now, and we're going to put Lappy in the NHL. I just can't see it happening. Um, Not in the mindset the Flyers are, in my opinion, or I think our opinion,
Yeah.
looking to improve next season, not just grow young players.
No, I agree. I just think where he's at in his coaching career doesn't make sense for the Flyers on what they're looking to do. It's more just like a common courtesy. You're the AHL coach. You're going to get an interview if something somehow occurs where, maybe he blows them out of the water or something. I guess you never know, but I would say it's a very slim chance, obviously. And then some of the more, I guess, established
So
candidates,
now
I guess.
we're going outside the org.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
exactly. Would be Rick Tocchet, Jay Woodcroft, David Carl, who's kind of the hot name, just coming out of college. Todd McClellan, very veteran coach, and then Mike Sullivan. And just to add, I mean, Sullivan and Tocchet right now are technically, still employed by their teams. I believe McClellan, he's the coach of Detroit as well, too, right?
He
So,
got fired
oh yeah, he
earlier
got
this
fired
year,
early this season. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then
So
they did much better without him.
yeah, fair enough. So, I mean, I just think out of all those candidates we kind of just went through here, like it depends on what the Flyers are trying to do. Like a guy like Talk, it's interesting just because he's the former Flyer name, but is he too similar to a John Tortorella where he's kind of has that win now mentality? Is that somebody you want to bring back in here right after you had a similar coach in Tort? So I think that's, one of the hot names that's been thrown around. What do you think about Talkett, Yariv?
So I mean, I'd be open to Rick Tocchet. Here's my thing with Tocchet and Sullivan. Until they're fired, it's hard for me to
It's a moot
speculate.
point. Yeah,
Right. It's hard
exactly.
for me to speculate. And this takes it for all the names that we're saying. It's like until they are available, like I don't think the Flyers are looking to hire anyone until the season ends and they have a good idea. I think if you're a coach that made the playoffs, the likelihood of you losing your job is pretty slim. So that goes for Tocchet as well. I think Mike Sullivan is probably high on their list. Look, I like Tocchet. Okay. I'd be interested. I'm okay. I think he could be. I don't want to get softer from a coaching standpoint to a certain degree. Doesn't mean that Tocchet is like um identical to Torts, right? But he is going to be a tougher coach. So is Craig Berube, right? So was Babcock and Quenville. Those are obviously two names that are out there as well. Like they're most veteran coaches, Cooper, they're going to be tough on their players. That's it. Most guys who are experienced, like ideally what the Flyers kind of need is a Jim Montgomery, who's not available. Obviously has
That would
done
have been a
very well
perfect, yeah,
in
that would have been a
St.
perfect
Louis.
hire. And St. Louis, I mean, it's not surprising to me he's doing well there. I mean, he was the assistant when they went on their cup run. He gets inserted back in. They're going on a similar type of run here, kind of to get themselves
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
playoffs. So it's really interesting.
They're doing very well.
Yeah, one kind of name that's off the board a little bit that I thought was an interesting one, and I wanted to bring it up. It's actually Todd Nelson. So he
I don't
is
know
the
who
head
that
coach of
is.
the Hershey Bears.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've won two Calder Cups, so I just add him in there because I figure, hey,
That's actually,
you've won two
yeah,
Calder Cups with Hershey. They've been known to be a winning team for almost the last 5 to 7
pretty
seasons here.
smart, Vasili.
They've, they've been a really good team. So I think it's an interesting one to look at just because, hey, he's been with the Bears for so long. Is he a guy that's going to want his taste at the NHL? He's actually had a year coaching with Edmonton back in 2014-15. Was not a good year. They finished sixth in the Pacific, obviously, in that season. That was kind of their down period. But yeah, not much NHL experience aside from that. I'm not too sure if he's had assistant experience at the NHL level, but in terms of head coach, only that one season with Edmonton. But I just think with the winning kind of pedigree
I
he's brought into that Hershey organization, it would be really interesting because you look at a lot of those young players that have graduated from Hershey to Washington. They're making a big impact on that Washington team right now. But who knows, right?
I
Like,
like that a lot, dude.
yeah,
That's
I thought it was
that's
interesting.
that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like I'm looking up his track record on Wikipedia. I think like this is the type of if you're looking for an up and coming coach, the AHL is probably a smarter bet because it's pro hockey, guys who
Yeah.
have been assistants, and again, I don't know if this is the guy, but you look at his record, most of the times, like here, I'm just gonna go through um AHL record. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not AHL. That's Oklahoma City Barons, right? That's not the AHL, right? That's the
Um,
OHL, right?
Oklahoma, I think it might be the
Or
AHL, yeah. I'm not
or
100% sure.
WHO. Okay, it might
Oh,
be, but lost in divisional semifinals, lost in conference finals, lost in conference finals, lost in quarterfinals, lost in division finals, won Calder Cup for the
yeah,
Grand Rapids.
they were an AHL team, so they
Right, yeah,
must be
that's why I
extinct
remember that.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when he went to Grand Rapids, he lost in the divisional finals, then won the Calder Cup, then lost in the division semifinals, then won a Calder Cup, and then won a Calder Cup.
Yeah,
So
he's won a
like,
lot of Calder Cups.
but
So
it's also showing that he has improved. He nailed the Muskegee Fury, right, where he was obviously playing. This is like a while ago, 20 years ago. So he had success at the lower level, moved up to the AHL, had semi success there. Now has kind of become a more elite coach, has won 3 cups with 2 different teams at the lower level. This is cool. Like, I like where your head's at. Like, I think if you're looking for an up and coming coach, the AHL is a pretty good place to look. And
yeah, that was kind of my thought process
yeah,
with it. Like I think if you're the Flyers, you're looking to go up and coming coach, not an established NHL guy.
wasn't
I
Sheldon Keefe was like that too, right? With the Marlies. Very
Yeah,
good Marlies coach.
yeah. He was really good with the Marlies, then obviously coached in the OHL under Dubas.
Yeah.
I forget what team, but that was the connection for them. But essentially, yeah, like that was my thought process in terms
Probably
of
the Greyhounds is my guess. Sault Ste. Marie
yeah,
Greyhound. He's got
I
like a
think
big
so.
thing with them. Yeah.
I think so. But for Nelson here, I just thought it was interesting because you're having that much success at the AHL level, obviously, as a coach. I think if you're the Flyers and you're going to go out of the box here and not go with that established coach, you're in a better position going with the AHL coach, a lot more experience
And
with pro players and at the pro level. Whereas the NCAA coach, I mean, sure, you're great with teaching the younger players. I just think, though, it's a lot different handling pro players versus guys that aren't playing for money.
and all of these guys would be that you're coaching against would be star coaches at the lower level because that's already what they were for
Typically,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, and David Carl's really young, which I don't love that he's younger than me. Um, and I'll say this too, what I'm thinking of when you're talking about Nelson, in that capacity, you might have more leverage to keep a guy like Brad Shaw and be like, hey, you're going to come in to our situation and you can pick a power play coach, but we're keeping this guy
Yeah.
who was the
That's
defensive coach
true.
here.
That's true, right? Like when you bring in an established NHL veteran head coach that's
It's a
been in
lot
multiple
harder.
places,
Yeah.
well, it's just that they're going to want it their way in the sense that, hey, I have my assistant coaches. This is the system we put into place. This is kind of who I need to bring with me to get the system put into place how I think it should be, right? If you don't let me bring these assistants, I'm not going to be as effective. Like they're going to probably try to make that type of argument. So you
Yeah.
do have definitely have more leverage if you're the Flyers if you're going with an AHL coach because they might not be as established to make those types of demands to you, right? So
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart. He's 55 years old. He's not that young, but he's also like not retirement age, right? He's 10 years younger than Torts. I like that. And again, Mike Sullivan's still high on my list. Todd McClellan, not so much. Um,
I think where the Flyers are at, it just doesn't make sense. He's like a win now type of coach that
yeah,
puts you over the top for like a playoffs, right? Or a
right.
playoff team. So
They need more of like an in between, but so is Mike Sullivan, right? And so is Rick Tocchet. My whole thing is like, I am ready to see the candidates once the end of the season comes, or even like the first round of the playoffs, and
yeah,
we see
it's
who
hard
gets
to know.
fired, right?
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah. I don't think Quenville is getting a shot with the Flyers. And I was listening to Charlie O'Connor's opinion on this, and I think he kind of nailed it. The Flyers are not in a position to bring in a coach with drama behind him
Yeah.
because they're not going to be like an amazing team next year, right? If you're like already a really good team and you're like, hey, we're going for a cup, we don't care if you guys are pissed. We're bringing in the 3-time Stanley Cup winner. Like,
Yeah.
we're
He's
going to
gonna put
be
us over the top,
we're
exactly.
yeah, we're gonna be one of the best teams in the league. So while you might have a problem, like kind of what happened, as long as it materializes into winning, where I think they might be looking more of like, hey, this is kind of a learning process, but we brought in a guy who's very good at the lower level. Like if they pick David Carl, cool, I'm open for the experiment, but I can't see the organization being that I think they'd rather go with a guy like Brad Shaw than David Carl. And not because Carl can't be a great coach, just because it's another risk on paper. And you already have such a young team and then a young team with a young coach. And it's like, okay, do you want to tank? Because that's kind of on paper of what could happen. Doesn't mean it will happen because I'm sure Carl is a great coach, but he seems like David Carl is a guy you bring in to be an assistant coach, like what they did with Knobloch, right? Like Knobloch came in, he learned his way. He was assistant coach and then assistant coach again, then got a head coach gig. Like that's kind of what you're looking.
Yeah,
And
you got
and
to
we don't
work your way up and pay your dues in a sense, right? So
and I'm sure there's one of those guys out there in the NHL that's an assistant, right?
yeah, exactly. Like, and if even if you look like I try to look at Spencer Carberry, like for Washington, right? He's been a really good coach for them, obviously. Like,
Yeah,
if you look at his trajectory, he was an AHL assistant with Providence, then he was the head coach for Hershey, then he was an assistant with the Leafs for 2 seasons, then was finally a head coach for Washington after that. So
exactly.
that's a typical, scenario a lot of times with coaches where you kind of have to work your way up through the AHL. That's why Nelson I thought was interesting because he's obviously paid his dues, a little bit older than a Carberry. So maybe this is kind of like, hey, if I really want to try to be a head coach at the NHL level, this is kind of it for me coming up, right? So we'll see though. Maybe I'm not sure what his contract situation is with Washington, or with that organization. So even if he'll be available, but I just thought that was an interesting one, definitely. It seems to me too with the coaches, right? Like even if they do have contracts, if a team really wants a coach, to step up in a position to be a head coach for the NHL, obviously the AHL team's going to let that guy go. So we'll see where it goes. But I think that's an interesting name to kind of keep an eye on, just with all the other names. I never really saw him getting mentioned at all.
Yeah, yeah. And now I'm like looking up other AHL coaches and Laval Rockets. They're also top, and they have Pascal Vincent, who I'm pretty sure played in the NHL. I remember his
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Um, but his numbers also this year, like I think that's probably pretty smart is to look for a guy who either is a top coach at the AHL level, and I'm not going to pretend like I know all of them, or a really good assistant coach somewhere. And look, Brad Shaw kind of falls under that category as well. Um, so I think we have to be open to the fact that Shaw might actually end up being the coach of this
It
team
could
next
be. It
year.
could be. Yeah, and Vincent, just to add, his name's familiar because he was actually the head coach of Columbus last season after they fired
Ah,
Babcock.
that's
So he was
that's what it is.
Babcock's assistant and then
Yeah.
took over, and then they
Uh,
just got rid of the whole staff in general, which makes sense.
and
So
again, doing very well at the AHL level. So like you have to get creative. We no matter what podcast you listen to, none of us are going to know these guys anywhere near as well as Briere and Jones, who know the industry, know people. They're going to talk to everybody. Their search is going to be
oh, of course,
probably
extensive.
pretty weird, and we're not going to know a lot of the names until we find out the names, right? And then we're going to learn more about these people. I will say, I think you're right, though. I think your instinct with a guy like Nelson is pretty smart, man. I think that's actually the best and most realistic name that I have heard so far mentioned. So
Yeah,
kudos
well,
on that one.
I just think you look at it from the sense that like, hey, he's a winner at the lower level, so obviously his success building a winning foundation of winning culture. But then you look at it too, like you're coaching at the AHL level, there's also a player development aspect of it as well. Look at all the great players Washington's kind of filtered in through their system, right? With in the last couple seasons here. So I think it's interesting, for sure, right, to get a guy like that. When you see such success in Washington, maybe you come here and you kind of replicate it. So I thought that was a good one. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. I think the playoffs is a big one too, right? Like there's so many coaches potentially that might be available that haven't been fired yet. We know what happens in the NHL. A team disappoints, coach gets fired. Who knows where it goes from that point? So I think there's probably a few names that we'll see added to the head coach free agency list once round one and two maybe finish off.
Yeah, I got another one for you.
Sure.
Kevin Dineen, former
Oh, that's
Philadelphia
interesting.
Flyer. He's
Yeah.
an AHL coach, one of the top coaches in the AHL. That's a guy I would not be surprised if we hear his name pop up.
Get an interview. Yeah, that could definitely be one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, like in terms of coaching, was he ever ahead? Yeah, because I remember him coaching Florida a long time ago. Yeah, that was a while ago though,
Yep.
back
But
in like
again,
2012.
but again, this is something people really, and I'm like repeating myself. This is something people really need to understand about coaching. Just because a guy isn't an amazing coach his first run doesn't mean he won't be a good coach. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, it's
like
possible.
Craig Berube should be a lesson learned to all of us, right? Like he was a pretty decent coach here. Wasn't like great, wasn't terrible, right? Lost his job when Hextall took over, went over to the Blues, became one of the best coaches in the league, won himself a cup, then gets one of the most prominent jobs in the NHL for the Leafs, and it made the Leafs look like they're going to finish at the top of the division this year. So it's like these guys evolve as well as
Yeah, just like
coaches.
players. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And you're
There's a
not
development process. Like if
right.
you're going to start off as a coach, you're not going to be at your peak as soon as you start off. There's going to be a learning curve and understanding what works and what doesn't work with pro players because it's
Yeah.
it's so different. Let's say you're a coach coaching junior and then you move up to the pro level. It's so different coaching junior players versus pro players, guys that are playing for money. It's a whole different situation, right?
Yeah,
So
which is something we need to think about because me and you have been very harsh on Lappy, and to his credit, his team has improved,
yeah,
and he's
yeah.
also getting a bunch of talent thrown at him now. Like the Phantoms are on paper very good, um, and he has gotten better at coaching. Like you can see it from the record. You can see how he gets his team to play as the season moves on, and especially this year, they weren't doing well in the beginning, and he's gotten better, and he has two green coaches. So you want to find somebody who's gone through all of this. So this is probably why they're not firing Lappy, right? Where
Well, they see
we
him as like almost it's almost like internally developing our own coach for the
e-
future potentially, right? So
exactly, and where we lose our patience with prospects, they are not going to lose their patience with a prospect to the same speed that we would. Right? They're going to give it that extra. So, like, Lappy's probably coming back again to be head coach of the Phantoms and to see can he take them if he doesn't win this year, assuming can he take them to a Calder? What if he wins a Calder or loses in the finals or does 2 3 years in a row of far playoff performance? Then they start going, well, maybe we bring this guy in the NHL level. Like you need to prove it. So we need to find one of those guys if they're going to be our next NHL coach, or we need to find a guy who's looking for an opportunity. Because I don't know how tempting Todd McClellan is. A guy like Mike Sullivan, I think, is just off his pedigree and what he's done, and guys who have won Stanley Cups and
McClellan's
all that.
really never won. So I mean,
He's always
personally,
fallen short.
I wouldn't go for a guy like
He's
that.
not. He's not on my list.
I think it's more of a benefit for you to get an AHL coach that you can potentially grow and become even better
Yeah.
as the years go on versus getting a guy like him that's already so established. But yeah, it'll
So
be
we
interesting. I think,
decided that we
yeah.
nailed it for the Flyers. Research done. No, I love your suggestion, dude. I think that because we didn't even have him on the list, and I think that is like you sold me on him. You know what I mean? So if you sold me, I joke around about this, but I always try to think like a GM. And I think you
Yeah.
do too. Like that's kind of the attitude of this show. And if I'm going into something, I'm looking at the guy's resume. I'm looking, okay, where can we find the next guy who like
Yeah,
again,
you want to get the next great coach, right? That
right,
should be the goal. So
right, to go with this team that he can be here for 4 years, 5 years, and earn his name, right, and be experienced enough that he can lead a guy like Couturier and TK. I know everybody likes to think about the young guys, but Sanheim is here. Coots is here. Hathaway is here, right? Like these guys are still here. So it can't be just a young coach that is like as young as the players on the team. It could work, but it's another risk. So you want to
yeah.
try to find in something right in the middle, right?
Well, we saw what happened with Hackstall, right, and how that played out. So I think the Flyers would like to avoid that
Right.
situation. So we'll see. I think if they go, I think any coach they're going with is going to be veteran to some degree, whether that's like a lot of AHL head coaching experience. We'll see. But I
But
think, like I
AHL
said,
championships too.
yeah,
I
no, for
love the
sure.
name. I love the guy that you brought up because Hershey's
But
always good too.
oh yeah, they've been a
Always
great
very good.
team. They've been in the playoffs for the AHL for like the last decade, maybe even plus. So yeah,
Right.
they've been really good for a long
And you
time.
want to take from good organizations.
Oh, I totally agree. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting search for the Flyers just based on where they're at, obviously. But I think there's going to be even more names we see get thrown into the discussion probably as, the playoffs end, the offseason gets underway, right?
Yeah. So let's go the complete opposite way, but we are talking about the future, and I want to talk about Mitchkov a little bit because I found this on my own. I like consistently just look up the rookies in the league, and one thing that has stuck out to me about Matvei Mitchkov, while he has not taken a lot of faceoffs, his percentage at the faceoff dot is 46.3%. And just to put it in perspective for you guys, Macklin Celebrini, who again is having tougher competition on the faceoff dot, has a 47.2%. So 1% higher, less than 1% higher than Mitchkov. Now, there are some other rookies who are doing better, but I'll tell you what, like Will Smith, a center, 35.6% at the NHL level. And this kind of goes back that like again, I don't think that putting Mitchkov in the middle in his rookie or even his sophomore year is a smart idea, especially a guy who's, quite frankly, not that good at D, not strong enough on his stick where he needs to be, but has obviously room to grow there. But the way he plays, his playmaking ability, his ability to enter the zone and you know send the puck off and set up a guy perfectly. He does play in a lot of ways offensively like a center. And I'm looking at these face-off numbers. I was like, is there a world here where Mitchkov can be tested out at center even in preseason or something and see can he handle draws? Can they slowly mold him into a center? I don't think ideally that's where they want him, but he does have the physique for it, the competitiveness, the tenacity. Having said that, you could stump some of his offensive production, forcing him to play a defensive role. It's very different than playing the wing role that he's in today. But I thought it was very interesting that his faceoff numbers are not bad for a rookie because any rookie in the NHL typically is not getting above 50% playing a full season in the NHL. They're typically falling somewhere around 45%. And Mitchkov seems to be at least beating the average with being a winger. So I just thought that was really interesting. That's kind of where he's at right now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting stat, like you said. I think it just speaks to his hockey sense. Like in general, I think a lot of winning faceoffs is hockey sense, knowing where to position your stick, where to put your skate, when to come in. It's all timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so, if you're a smart player and you have really good timing and kind of like I just look at Mitchkov and how smart he is in all other aspects. So when you put him in that faceoff circle, it doesn't surprise me that he's doing a good job. Are they going to try him at center? I mean, that remains to be seen. I don't know. Personally, I don't think they would. I don't think they want to. I
I don't
think
think so
it's
either.
almost like something they would do maybe if they got forced. Like they knew, hey, like we tried to address our center position, it's not happening the way we wanted. So now we're going to kind of try to force feed this. Personally, I don't think they should do it unless you're really forced into it. But we'll obviously see. But it's an interesting thing to bring up, right? I think, like you said, it just speaks to his hockey sense overall.
Yeah, I just look at other names like, and some of these guys are being rotated in the center. So like Logan Stankoven, 45.3%, Fraser Mitten, 45.8%,
Yeah,
Frank Nazar, who's playing, I believe, playing on the wing right now. He
yeah,
might be playing in the center, 45.9%. Luchenko's at 46% in the small sample size he has. Samuel Hellenius, who played 45 games this year, 46.5%. Maverick Bork is 47%. Again, Celebrini, 47.2. So, like, he's putting up, like, young center face-off numbers, which I just find very interesting, which that's not the only thing of the job, but um, it's interesting because Claude Giroux was converted to a center, right?
Yeah.
He came in as a winger, but was converted at the minor league level, right? He wasn't converted at the NHL level.
Yeah, that's the thing that's tougher about
Yeah.
it. I think with Mitchkov will just be a wait and see. Like, let's say he crushes it so much next season, for example, and they're really desperate at center, you might just be like, hey, let's throw him in there for 5 games and see what happens, right?
I
Like,
just with how competitive he is though, dude, I would not be surprised if next season
well,
all of a sudden Mitchkov is
Scott tried him there in their
right.
preseason for a reason. So we'll see if the Flyers do the same thing. I think if you're gonna do it, preseason's the best place to try. So
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can't see it happening in season, but and I think to your point, it's like a kind of well, we haven't found a guy yet, but if the Flyers draft what we think they're going to draft, they're going to find that
yeah,
guy, and
that's what I mean.
And
Yeah.
they have Luchenko. So assuming they get a Frondell or a Hagens or something,
You don't need to force feed that type of situation,
right? But
right?
then you
So
have your top two prospects are centers,
yeah.
so they're looking good from. But it is interesting. I just find it interesting. Okay. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notifications on when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes and give us a follow and a rating if you can. Again, that is the best way to support our podcast. So a big piece of news, and obviously this is a little late because it's already happened and it's been everywhere, is that Alexander Ovechkin is officially the all-time leading goal scorer at 39 years old, and he turns 40 in September. He has 42 goals in 61 games. He is on another 50 plus point pace
He
at
yeah.
39,
He
and
would have got 50 goals, right? Like if it
yes,
wasn't for the broken leg. So
yes, and he beat Gretzky's scoring record. Still has a chance to hit 900 goals. I think that the consensus still is that he's going back to Russia to finish out his career. Again, when you're this good at the NHL level and your team is second in the league in winning percentage, maybe he'll change his mind and choose to
yeah.
sign here a little bit longer. But as of right now, he has a chance to build on that lead and to hit 900, which I believe he will do this season, or at least there's a good chance that he could do it this season. I think they still have 6 games left, so I would not be surprised if he's going for 900. But incredible, amazing reaction. Again, they lost that game, but if you looked at them, it's like they won the
Dude,
Stanley Cup.
His Selly, like he slid on the ice. That was the best thing
Perfect.
ever. That was
It was
like that was
perfect.
classic Ovechkin. Like just his energy and like the way that he
Yeah.
kind of like acts in these moments. Like that is
That was
I
an
would not expect that.
all-time moment.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would not expect anything less. To be honest, I loved Gretzky too, just like the way he handled everything. I thought he was a class act. Just the way
Yeah.
like he went about it. I don't know if anybody heard him on Spit and Chicklets. It wasn't a recent episode, but he said when he broke the record, like Gretzky himself, he felt embarrassed and he didn't want to like break his favorite player's record, Gordie Howe, at that time. And I guess he said that to his father, like, I don't want to break Gordie Howe's record. I feel embarrassed by this. And
That's
his
great.
father said, please, like, whoever breaks your record, you have to be as great, like, as graceful to them as Gordie was to you, right? And I think he definitely was with
Took that to
Ovechkin.
heart.
Yeah, like it was a class act for Gretzky. I think it's just crazy. The whole thing for me, the craziest part of it, is just the games played, like the fact it's so close for both of them. Like Gretzky, 1,487 games played, 894 goals scored. Ovechkin, 1,487 games played, 895 goals scored. Just like that is crazy to me, right? Like just the fact that the games played is so close. For me, I'd love to see Ovechkin. Like I think keep playing a couple more seasons, try to get to 1,000 goals because the way he's playing, I don't think I think if he played 2 more years or 3 more years, he might get to 1,000. That'd be a really cool milestone to end off on. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, yeah. It would be awesome if he could play in the NHL because he still obviously can do it for at least 2 more seasons
Yeah,
after
think about
this.
it. He would have scored 50 this year if he played a full season.
He would have hit
So,
1,000 if he didn't lose out on two
well,
seasons due to
yeah, well,
lockouts.
think about yeah, right. Like think about that '05 season getting locked out. Think about the 2012, 2013 season. You lost half that
And then
season. And
COVID.
then COVID. He definitely would have smashed it by now. But yeah.
Yeah.
I hopefully he can get to 1,000. I think that would be a great way to end. Like hit 1,000, retire. But we'll see, right? If he wants to keep going that long.
It's clear cut that Alexander Ovechkin is clearly a top 10 NHL player of all time. I
Top
think that,
five for me. I mean,
and
how can you argue it? He
especially
scored the most goals ever.
and
So
he's third all time or something like that in hits as well.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like undoubtedly he's the best power forward
ever.
ever, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's the best goal scorer ever. So
He did it in what, a game more than Gretzky, I think.
the same amount of games.
Same amount
So
of
he
games.
so in 14 in 1487 games, he has 895 goals scored. In 1487 games, Gretzky has 894 goals scored. So one less in the same amount of games played, which is nuts, right? Like it's just that whole stat is crazy. Just the fact they're even that close in games played, like you couldn't make like write the story any better, like
Yeah,
right?
it's
So it's
so
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, it's really awesome. And look, everybody loves Ovechkin. Let's be honest. He's a guy you wish he was on your team. And it only feels right with how good him and Crosby are. Like I'm sure Crosby is gonna hold his own records. It's like these guys are generational talents. And he's earned it now. He is forever enshrined in hockey.
Oh,
He will
yeah.
be known as the Great Eight forever,
Yeah,
right? Like,
literally.
yeah.
It's awesome. I can't
And we'll
wait. I mean,
probably
for
have his
him,
number retired.
oh yeah, him and I think for him and Crosby, like once they retire, it'll be awesome for them to do like some sort of sit down like podcast and just
Yeah.
talk about like everything that they did together, like the whole their whole
Yeah.
era. I can't wait for something like that.
Yeah. And every moment of this guy's career has been memorable. From the spinorama scoring on his ass
That
goal,
yeah, oh
just like
yeah.
from the moment he came into this league to the time he leaves, he is absolutely exciting
Dude,
to
well,
the
yeah,
game.
he's just been an electrifying player, right? Like
Yeah.
he's always just been a guy that no matter what, when Ovechkin's on the ice, you have to be aware, have to be watching because anything could happen, really.
He is more recognizable to the average NHL fan
Yeah.
than McDavid. Or not NHL
Oh,
fan, that to the average non-NHL fan than
yeah.
McDavid.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. I would say too, like it's crazy this season. Like you have Ovechkin break this record, then you have Crosby becomes the first player ever to get 20 point per game seasons. So well, that's a crazy record too. Like nobody really talked about that as much. Obviously,
Yeah.
this is gonna overshadow it, but like 20 point per game seasons for Crosby. He's the only player ever to do that. That's nuts as well. So
Yeah. And it would be crazy if McDavid even came close to that because he's a guy who probably could put up a bunch of 50 goal seasons too, but I don't think he's hitting 900.
well, Matthews, like you even look at Matthews, right? He has over 400 goals right now, but he just can't he just isn't healthy a lot. So you have to
Yeah.
look at it. You got to look at it from Ovi's perspective. Like, think about not only did he score all these goals, but like he had to stay healthy for all those seasons too. I think that's another aspect of it. Like actually being able to stay healthy for that long. You know how hard that is in a league like the NHL, right? So
It's
you have to commend that too. If he doesn't stay healthy all these years, he doesn't even get close. So that's a major part of it.
yeah. You know what's crazy? Mike Bossy has the most goals per game
Oh
of all
yeah,
time.
nasty, nasty player,
Bossy,
legend.
Lemieux is two.
Wow, these are legends we're talking about, so it's
Yeah.
not surprising
I
to
mean, but
me.
that's the guy, and Bure is above Ovechkin. He only played 700 games in the
He didn't
NHL.
play a lot of games, yeah. Like he really, I mean, even Gretzky,
Russian
like
Rocket.
yeah, Gretzky played a lot, but like he only really retired at like 35,
You know,
36.
you know what's
So
crazy too? Brett Hull and Bobby Hull, 9 and 10.
yeah, that's pretty funny for your dad and then son,
Talk
dad and son
talk about
combo.
being a clone, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
All
Oh
right.
man.
Let's move on to our next topic. So the next big piece of news from around the NHL, and this happened earlier today, according to Elliot Friedman, Ivan Demidov, Mitchkov's fake rival,
I mean, these guys are
has
probably best, well, not best friends, but really close friends,
they're close.
obviously.
And I was just telling Vasili the other day that Demidov was born on December 10th, and Mitchkov was born on December 9th, which is hilarious.
Really
But
weird, yeah.
Demidov signed his ELC officially. He's going to be coming over from SKA to play with Montreal, and I don't think they could ask for a better addition going into the playoffs than to bring over their top offensive prospect. They already are like a pretty decent team. Like they're not an amazing team. They're probably not going to go far in the playoffs realistically, but this is definitely going to help. It's a dangerous weapon. Again, Demidov ended up with most points of all players on SKA this year, where
Yeah,
they
49 points in
in
65
65
games.
games and they did not have a great season. And just for everybody who's aware of this, Mitchkov had 41 points in 47 games. So Demidov had an under point. I think he had a .77 points per game. Mitchkov had a .88 points per game. So for how impressive Demidov has been this year, on a better team than what Mitchkov was on, and Mitchkov had pneumonia. Mitchkov still had a better KHL season than him. Having said that, Demidov is still an exceptional talent and should very much
Yeah.
help Montreal immediately. And quite frankly, he's one of the best young players in the world. It's undeniable. So getting that type of talent from Montreal, like, good
That's
for
gonna be
them, dude.
fun. That's gonna be
Yeah.
fun just to watch him, obviously, kind of make his debut here and then get into some playoff action. I think for Montreal, it's interesting. They're sneaky right
Yeah.
now.
They're
Like
young.
yeah, they're young, but I mean, like they beat Florida 3 times in like the last month. Like they've been beating some pretty good teams. Obviously, Florida's had a lot of injuries and stuff like that, but that's still, that's no slouch. Obviously, the defending Stanley Cup champs. So they've been, doing really well. So I'm kind of interested to see who they end up matching up against. It's probably looking like Washington, just based on
That's
everything.
going to be
But
tough.
yeah, I mean that's going to be a tough matchup for them for sure. I will say though, one X factor for Montreal, I will say to keep an eye on is their goalie. Like Montembeault is actually really good. I think he's really underrated. So
Hmm.
if they have any ability of upsetting in the playoffs, he's gonna obviously have to stand on his head. But I think he'll be the reason why. Because
Yeah.
he's had some lights up performances that I've
Yeah.
seen like where you just
And
can't beat him.
and you gotta be if you're a Montreal fan, you gotta be happy with the way you're getting into the playoffs, the strong second half, the
The
fact
young
that
players doing
that
it, yeah.
yeah, that you're being led by a lot of young players, not all young guys, but guys in their mid 20s. You have some good veterans on there. You have a lot of really good young talents, Slavkovsky, Hudson, now Demidov coming in
New
there. So
hook.
yeah, yeah, New Hook as well, which was an addition. So good for them. I think it's nice that they got Demidov over there, and I'm actually really happy Russian guys are coming over here. I want this whole Russia, U.S., or North America thing, to be above
Yeah, yeah.
politics, and I want this stuff to end. Like,
Well,
one,
you
I
want
want
the
the
best
war to end,
players. You
but
want the best players. I mean, obviously
exactly.
in the NHL, in the league, playing amongst each other. So when you have those global, geopolitical issues, sometimes it could be tougher. I think we're kind of getting closer to the end of that.
Yeah.
So it's good for hockey in general to get best on best players together playing. So
Yeah. And that
it'll
actually
be
leads,
interesting for
yeah.
Demidov.
Yeah.
I think he's so talented too. So it'll be fun to see him in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah, I'm interested to see how he does in the NHL. I imagine he comes in and does a great job, to be honest with you. I can't I see him coming in and doing something similar, probably not as strong, but something similar to what Mitchkov did. And quite frankly, he's got a little bit better of a team around him. So his offensive numbers should be pretty solid when he comes in here for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so the next big piece of news, and this one is not final yet, but is close, but a little more complicated. So Alec Nikishin, sorry, uh, big time defenseman for SKA. He's been their best defenseman for 3 years running right now.
Captain
He
as well, right?
Yep, captain as well, 2 years in a row. This is his second year as captain. They don't really want to lose him, but he does have leverage. He's 23 years old. He was drafted by the Carolina Hurricanes. Seems to be the best defenseman not in the NHL in the world. And the Canes, who don't need that much help, seem to be like they're about to get some serious help on the back end. And a guy who could walk in and be a top pairing defender like day one on their team at 23 years old. Again, a two-way defenseman, offensive skill, put up 17 goals this season and the previous season. Again, would have put up just the same amount of points. He had 46 points in 61 games. but his team didn't produce as much offensively, so he had 10 less assists in
Yep.
6 less games. But previous year, 56 points, 67 games. Again, incredibly impressive for defenseman, a plus player pretty much every year in the KHL outside of his rookie year. He was a -3. So this is a guy who's very good at defense, very good at offense, 6'4". Flyers wish they had this guy in their pipeline. I think most teams wish. I think he was taken in the second
Third
round,
round pick.
third round pick,
Yeah, 69th overall. He was a real great find for Carolina.
69. Sweet.
Yeah, I know, right? I think it's interesting, like move for Carolina, just because obviously in the KHL he's a number one defenseman for SCA. So you'd imagine just him being 23 years old, kind of through his development in that league, almost a point per game in the last 3 seasons, essentially as a defenseman there. And we know the KHL is not as high of a scoring league as the NHL at this point. So like you just wonder what can he step into at the NHL level and kind of become. And the Canes already have a really good defense. So, you slide him in next to Jacob Slavin and say, hey, let Slavin worry about the defense. And you kind of just fly up there with Aho and see what happens,
Yeah.
right? We might have interesting, not only like some offense to add in, but just even to help their power play. Because the Canes have been a good team, but their power play has been really bad this season. I think in the 20s. So he's going to help them in that facet too. So I just think for Carolina in general, right, you're adding a top pair guy in a potential playoff run. That's a huge ad for them, right? Like
And
they've been
when
a
was
team
he drafted? Third round,
third
right?
round.
Not top
Yeah, exactly.
five. Not top
Yeah.
five. Just wanted to make that clear to people.
But yeah, I would say for Nikishin, like, and what he can bring to Carolina, you're essentially, like I said, I've said it a couple times already. You're adding a top pair defenseman. So, how big is that going to be for them and maybe getting them over the hump finally because they've been to second rounds, been to conference finals, haven't been able to really get over the hump. So I'm interested to see kind of what he can add for them.
Yeah. I haven't seen much of him play. I'm actually very interested to see him play. Um,
Well, when I
it's
was watching Mitchkov last year to start off with
a little
Sky,
bit,
I was
yeah.
kind of catching him a little bit and he looked pretty good. Obviously, not paying attention specifically to him, but I would just say really smooth skater. So that's always a plus.
I do know Rottenberg was extremely high on him.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think the NHL wants him over here in general, and they'll probably not get in the way of whatever the Canes are doing.
yeah,
Because this is a potential star player coming over the NHL, similar to Demidov. Demidov is only 19, and Nikishin is 23.
kind of
So
like entering his prime age almost. Yeah,
right, he's going to be that one of those young star defensemen. It's kind of like the Canes are adding like a Luke Hughes, right? Like a big offensive defenseman with skill at both ends. It's like,
yeah.
it's probably exactly what the doctor ordered for
Even
them,
maybe more
especially after
established
their
because like you look at it, right? He's played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons in the KHL. That's 5 professional seasons. So you have to
right
think like, how does that
seasoned,
help your development?
cooked. He's cooked. He's like ready to be taken out of the oven and thrown into the NHL game. And we've seen, look, he's a defenseman. It's going to be tougher, but we've seen when really good Russian players come over here, 2, 3 years, 5 years after being drafted, they typically come in and do really well immediately. So
Yeah,
he could be a huge boost for them, and maybe an X factor to a very long playoff run for them. Because if you have and size in the playoffs matters immensely, and this guy's big. I mean, he's a big body. 215 pounds, 6'4", like you know, every team wants a defenseman like this. So we'll see what he does when he comes over. Anything else you want to say on him?
no, that was all, Yariv.
Yeah.
That's all I pretty much have.
Okay. Yeah, the next piece of news, I don't have too much information on this, but I do know that Alex Bump, a guy we're still waiting to get his ELC, but the reason he has not gotten his ELC most likely at this point is because he made the Frozen Four. So they won their last game 2-1. He's still an immensely important part of that team. So good luck to him. He's got
Yeah,
a hell of a resume at this point, but it's important that if he wins Frozen Four, that's fantastic
that's
for
great
him to
for
bring
the
into the
develop.
NHL.
Yeah, great for the development. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the Flyers, I would imagine at this point, like they're probably not going to bring him in. There's 5 games left, so he'll just finish out his
Well,
season and then.
playoff run. They did
Well,
that with
yeah,
Carter and Richards.
no, I mean like maybe for the I'm saying like on the on the Flyers specifically. Like they're not going to bring him in to play for the
Oh,
Flyers at
right,
this
right, right.
point.
Yeah.
But maybe down the line, like you said, right? Like he's going to get onto the Phantoms here. Assuming he'll sign his ELC after the college season ends, obviously. And then maybe get him geared up for the Phantoms playoff run. So that'll be interesting to just see all those guys down there, right? Like a Luchenko, potentially him. Um, who else? I'm forgetting
Ciernik,
somebody. Sierra Nick, yeah, there we go. And then
Gen
maybe you
Gendron.
see Barkey and Bonk, I guess, depending on what happens there. But
Their
we'll
run is
see.
probably going to run long, but we'll see. So yeah, let's talk about the Phantoms here as we wrap up. So the Phantoms have officially made the playoffs. Hartford lost, so it enabled the Phantoms to officially make the playoffs. They finished their season with a 33-27-6-2 record, 74 points, a .544 winning percentage, only 17 regulation wins. Didn't do amazing here at the end, but they do go into the playoffs, with a generally stronger team than they had during the regular season. Vasili mentioned it already. They have Gabrankin, who came over in the Lawton trade. They've added Ciernik. They've obviously added Luchenko, who finished with 2 assists in 5 games, a +1, playing top six forward role. So they're kind of gearing to go. Their first game, I had it open earlier, is Friday, April 11th at 7 o'clock against the Syracuse Crunch. So that series begins. Syracuse is obviously the higher ranked team, not by too much. They had 33 wins, 21 losses, 8-4. So a couple more victories in overtime and a couple more overtime losses than Lehigh Valley. But similar records, should be a pretty good matchup. Again, the Phantoms have, a good amount of scores this year. And just to go over it with people, I had it open. So Lexel still leads the team with 41 points. Jacob Gauthier, 36 points in 67 games. Richard, 35 points in 40 games. Tuamala, I believe, is still injured, 32 points in 46 games. Zaid Wisdom finished fifth on the team in points, 30 points in 64 games. Gendron, 20 goals this year in his rookie year. Very good. Only 8 assists, but 28 points
Yeah,
in.
that's really impressive to see him. Like think about seventh round pick
Yeah.
and what he's putting up at the AHL level. That's a guy to watch, I would say.
Yeah, Ethan Sansom with a very impressive goal scoring, 11 goals, 12 assists, minus 14 on the season, but there's a lot of guys who are minuses. Sansom, again, a developing prospect, but developing fast. So, again, this is a late pick for the Flyers. So, the fact he's doing this well already. So, they're doing it by committee. Rizzo's still on the team. They brought in Ciernik. They brought in Luchenko. Maybe some other names are going to be added like Bump, Bonky, Barky. I said Bonky, Barky,
Put them
Bonk.
together. That's going to
Yeah,
be their name when they get on the power play
yeah,
together.
Mr. Bonky. Um, yeah, so they have a good amount of talent. Again, the goalie situation is still a little bit strange. Parker Gahagen, one goaltender of the week. His numbers are considerably better than Peterson. I assume Peterson's still the starter for them for whatever reason, but it seems like Gahagen's done a really good job.
You'd hope they can get Kolosov in there to start, maybe. Like, I don't know though, but
Why
it
he's
doesn't
not
make a lot
playing
of
for them now doesn't make
yeah,
sense, but
it doesn't make a lot of sense at all. I mean, so basically the way the AHL playoffs works, right, is it's a first round best of three, and then
yeah.
whoever wins the best of three, you're going to go on to a division semifinal best of five, and then another division final best of five, and then the conference final goes best of seven, and then the Calder Cup's best of seven. So a little bit of a different setup. The Phantoms will start off against the Providence Bruins. And then also the other team in the bracket with them is Scranton Penguins will face off against Springfield Thunderbirds. So the winner of those two rounds are either going to face, Hershey Bears. So they'll face the lower seeded first round winner. or the Charlotte Checkers, will face the higher seeded first round winner. So it might be a similar thing for last season where like the Phantoms did win their first round, but then you got to face Hershey, which is like the best team in the AHL, right? So
Yeah.
obviously potential tough matchup, but you add a lot of younger guys. I think it'll be interesting and good experience to go up against potentially a team like a Hershey if you face them again, right? So
Yeah, and that'll be a real test for them. So this is where Lappy can kind of prove his progression as coach, is see if they can make it far in the playoffs this year. They're not the most talented team in the AHL, but they should have enough talent, especially with Lexel coming back. Maybe Andre.
yeah.
Maybe they send down Dewart to play in the playoffs, which I think they should. I don't know. I assume he does not need to pass through waivers, just having no NHL experience. And then the X factor that I brought up, and it's unlikely because he's obviously NHL, not just ready, but he's a star. But it would be awesome if Mitchkov went and played in the playoffs for the Phantoms.
Oh,
Like,
that'd be amazing. I don't know if it's going to happen. I just think
I
after a
don't think
long
so.
season, they're going to give the kid a break and say, hey, go
Hmm.
focus on your off season, focus on the NHL next season. But
Yeah,
it'd be awesome to see him go down there and rip it up. I'm sure he'd contribute
but
to a
it would
playoff run
be
for them.
playoff experience for him, which he hasn't gotten enough of because he
Yeah.
wasn't on good teams in the KHL the past 2 years, right? He was on a bottom feeder both seasons that he played in the KHL. So it's like it would be nice for him to get some playoff experience, and he would immediately become the best player on that team.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And
it'd
if you want
be,
to win a Calder, he would he would be by far the best player in the AHL in
yeah.
general.
I mean, like I said, right? Like if you went down there, it definitely would be like the best player there, potentially the best player in the whole league, probably the best player in the whole league. But
Yeah.
I just think after a long season, they probably
No, I
just
think
won't
you're
do
right.
it.
Yeah, I think you're
Uh,
right. I don't
but
think
we'll
I
see
don't see
what
it happening.
we'll see what happens. I mean, hey, it'd be fun if they could send him down and you have him and Lechenko kind of ripping it up in the playoffs. It'd be awesome to see it. But
I mean, he could be I don't even know who he would play with because it's like,
I just play
who
him with Lechenko because if you're trying to develop for the future, you put those two guys together,
I
see what happens, right?
yeah, but if you're in the playoffs, are you developing for the future or are you trying to win a
I
Calder,
guess.
right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if we're
So
thinking about hypotheticals, who knows, right? But
I'd love
to
to see Gendron on his wing, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
that'd be cool.
Pure shooter.
Yeah, yeah. Him and Lechenko would be a
Because
good
they'll
mix,
set
I'd
him
say.
up. He's gonna rip through that league if he plays down there. But it's not gonna happen.
Mitchkov, yeah, he's
It's
not
not
gonna
gonna
play down
happen.
there,
It's
Yariv.
not gonna
Sorry to
happen.
tell you, but
But normally, like, a lot of times that is stuff you will see, and like we'll see if Andre gets sent down because he's like at this point he's an NHL guy, but he's been playing with the Phantoms all year. Like
yeah.
he would be a big addition to getting him back. He'd be a big
I think
still
Andre will
he would
go
be their best
down.
defenseman
Andre will definitely go down just because he's played almost half the season with the Phantoms, right? So I think that's a whole different situation. Obviously, you played on the team, you're essentially a team member of the Phantoms, whereas like Mitchkov hasn't played one game,
for
right?
the
So
Phantoms. Yeah, yeah. No, I think
yeah,
you're
yeah.
100% right. It's more of like my fantasy to see
Oh, that'd
him.
be amazing as a fan to see it
Yeah.
happen. I
He'd
love
have
it,
he'd
but
have like 2 points a game in that league. So
probably more
and
to
I
be
want to see
honest.
I
But
want to see them win a Calder. So I'm kind of like, how do I load up the Phantoms, and
yeah, right.
get all the best players that we can on there and beat Hershey, right? And like that, if you really want to beat a team like Hershey, you add a guy like Mitchkov, and yeah. So I would recommend watching the AHL games. If you guys are not aware, this is not a legal source, but I'm going to mention it anyway. On Hockey, I forget the rest of it, but just Google On Hockey. They're
On hockey.tv if you
dot
want to watch
TV.
any games.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's not a legal source, but go ahead
yeah.
and watch hockey. Who cares?
Considering you probably are not going to be able to find AHL games to watch otherwise, and you're not going to
Yeah.
pay the money
Yeah,
for it.
unless you want to pay for it. I mean, which I wouldn't recommend that either,
Yeah,
but
well, it'll be a better feed if you pay for it, or go to AHL.com and
yeah.
they have a TV feed. You can watch the playoff games through there, and maybe they'll put some on television here locally. We'll see. Um,
NHL
but
Network will play some games, but it's not very
yeah,
often.
I switched to YouTube TV, and they don't have NHL Network, so but it was worth it because Comcast was
Yeah, that's probably a better move.
screwing me up the ass with
Any
prices.
cable company, man, is going to screw
Yeah,
you up the ass. So that's
true.
unfortunate, but that's the truth.
Yeah. All right. That's it for us. still went almost 2 hours, Vasily,
Yeah,
which,
I
or at
know.
least an
It's
hour and a
awesome.
half.
That's okay.
Um, cool. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
No, just I mean, season's wrapping up, but we're obviously going to continue to have episodes every week. So just, keep an eye out and we're going to keep having the content out for you all.
Yeah. I'll be in Israel for the next 10 days starting Thursday. It's going to be a shorter trip, so I'll be doing one episode from Israel as we wrap up the season here. And again, look forward to the off-season stuff because we're going to get a lot more into the draft and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to that
That's
personally.
where all the fun stuff's happening too,
Yeah, the
right? For the
lottery
Flyers
is like
anyway. So we'll
that's our
see what
big thing.
happens.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
lottery draft right now. Where do we draft? Do we win the lottery? And if we land at 5 or whatever, there's a good chance we're getting Frondell or Hagens or Misa or something. So who knows? Okay. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified of when we release our episodes. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow there as well. Again, that is the best way to support our show. And shout out to Jim Steaks at 4th and South. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs and allow them to help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also a shout out to sportspider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate content from all over the internet of all sports, all the NHL, and all Flyers content. Our stuff is pinned at the top. The link for sportspider.com is in the description. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Vasili, for being awesome. We appreciate you guys. We love you. And remember, always stay